So last week, Team Canada and Team USA announced their invitees list for the upcoming Winter Olympic Games in Italy. And while the Montreal Canadiens had 3 invitees going to Team Canada, there was one snub that everybody started to talk about. But it isn't really a snub. I'll talk about it here on Puck Talk Montreal. Hey gang, Kosta with another edition of Puck Talk Montreal. And let's face it, when you take a look at Team Canada, Team USA, the philosophies aren't always the same, right? Oftentimes, Canada will have a little bit of a smaller team, Team USA a little bit bigger, tougher. And so we think that because our best players should go, they will go. And that can be said for guys like Nick Suzuki, Noah Dobson, and of course Sam Montembeault, who all 3 got picked to go to the invitees camp. Of course, between you, me, and the walls in this studio, I think that Sam Montembeault is going to be the third-string goaltender again behind Jordan Binnington and Adin Hill. But on the U.S. side of things, everybody's lost their minds because Lane Hutson got snubbed from the Olympic list. Well, on the surface, if this was just any given game, you'd be right. But there are over 800 players in the National Hockey League of different nationalities, sizes, skill sets, what have you. And so when you take a look at what happened at the Four Nations face-off, that's really what's dictating a lot of the decision-making on both sides, whether it's Canada, the U.S., even the teams in Europe, because they saw what happened. Between Canada and the USA. We saw that fight 3 seconds in. We saw that it was a rough and tough series. We saw that they just don't like each other. And so what are you going to do? You're going to put one of the smallest defensemen you have in your country to go play against some of the biggest players in Canada? So here's the thing. If you take a look at the list, right? Here's the list of forwards that were invited to Canada's camp. The smallest guys on this list are Connor Bedard, Sidney Crosby, Seth Jones, who's a defenseman, Brad Marchand, Braden Point, Nick Suzuki, and that's it. Everybody else is over 6 feet. So ask yourself the question, why in the world, strategically now, I'm not talking fan here, okay, but strategically, as a management staff, as a coaching staff, whatever you want to talk about. Why in the world would you take a guy who's 5'7", yes, he's listed at 5'9", but he's not 5'9", and put him in against some of the biggest guys in the world? Not just the National Hockey League, but in the world, right? There are big guys in every country, whether it's Sweden, Finland, Canada, US, Germany, Switzerland, you name it, all right? There's going to be physicality. There's going to be times on the boards you need somebody to be able to get in there and muck it up and be able to get the puck out, especially in the defensive zone on bigger ice. Now, granted, because it's bigger ice, maybe Lane Hutson would be able to flourish offensively. So you think to yourself, maybe they would put him on the defense, right, as a power play specialist. As an example, right? You wouldn't necessarily have him there 5-on-5, and you certainly wouldn't have him out there killing penalties, but maybe power play. But here's the thing. The rosters are limited. It's not like you have in the NHL where, if somebody gets hurt, you can either take somebody that you have on your active roster or you can call up somebody from the American Hockey League. Olympic rosters are finite. You have a set list of players that you go into the Olympics with, and come hell or high water, that's all you can draw on. So if you're the Americans and you need to be sure of the players that you have there, why in the world would you put Lane Hutson on that list? And if he gets injured, what do the Montreal Canadiens do at that point? Now, here's a list of the defensemen that Team Canada put out there. Excuse me, this is Team USA's defensemen, right? Okay, you've got Brock Faber, Quinn Hughes, Seth Jones, Charlie McAvoy, Brett Pesce, Jake Sanderson, Jacob Slavin, and Zach Werenski. Now, don't ask me why Seth Jones is on that other list. Maybe, I don't know, but he was there. I didn't make the list. I just copied it. But here's the thing. You take a look at all this list of all these players. The smallest guy on this list, bar none, is Quinn Hughes. Now, take a look at the defenseman for Team Canada for a second. Evan Bouchard is 6'3". Noah Dobson, 6'4". Drew Doughty, 6'1". Aaron Ekblad, 6'4". Thomas Harley, 6'3". The smallest guy on this defense is Cale Makar, along with Brandon Mantor and Mackenzie Weegar. Now, granted, some of those guys, other than Makar, may not very well make the lineup for Team Canada. But how can you sit there and say to yourself, okay, they put in defensemen that are of a certain size, but they put in guys like Cale Makar, like Noah Dobson, who have the skill set to be able to move the puck up the ice, and they're still over 6 feet tall. When you're Lane Hutson and you give up that much size against forwards on Team Canada that are going to grind and hit, you know Canadian hockey. You know how Canadian hockey players play. It's not just about carrying the puck into the zone and playing a Russian style of game, for lack of a better term. You're talking about guys that are going to put it off the boards and chip it in and come in hard on the forecheck, finishing body hits, separating man from puck, and trying to create offense. It's been like that for decades for Team Canada. And while you do have pockets of players that play with skill, you still have those grinders out there. Otherwise, Brad Marchand's name would not be on this list. You need guys like that in your lineup to be able to go out there, muck it up, get their noses dirty, get the opponent off their game, and, just be rats, for lack of a better term, because that's what they call Marchand anyway. So what do you want to do? As a Montreal Canadiens fan, you want to put Lane Hutson out there against the best players that Canada can give you, and let's see what happens over a 2-week period. He won't get hurt, is what you're saying. He's elusive. Sure he is. If he gets injured in a Montreal Canadiens uniform, I can handle that because he's playing for the Montreal Canadiens. When he goes out into an external tournament and he plays for Team USA and he gets hurt, who's that on? It's not on the Montreal Canadiens for letting him go. It's not on the Team Canada players for doing what they were asked to do by John Cooper and the rest of the coaching staff. It's not on Team USA. Who's it on? Well, I'll tell you. It's on people like you and me who would put the pressure on Team USA to send a kid like Lane Hutson out there and get him hurt. I'm telling you, it's not rocket science here, guys. It's not about his skill set. It's not about saying that it's a snub and that Lane Hutson isn't good enough to play with Team USA. They know he's good enough to play with Team USA. But is he good enough to defend against Canada's best players? You have to admit that if you look at his stats, okay, most of his zone starts on the offensive are in the offensive zone. It's not going to be that way in the Olympics. He's not going to be able to have all his zone starts in the offensive zone. He's going to need to be able to play in all situations. That's what Canada and every other country expects from every defenseman that they invite to these tournaments. It's not about what you did in the NHL. It's about what you can do internationally. And while Lane Hutson had success at the World Juniors with Team USA, that doesn't necessarily translate into success playing with the big boys. We've seen it happen, right? How many times has Team USA brought in a skilled team and gotten their asses handed to them? So think about it. Why would Team USA do that again? I don't see the reasoning. Put it in the comments and tell me. Tell me I'm wrong here to think that Lane Hutson, given the fact that he's a one-trick pony for all intents and purposes, that's what he is. He's an offensive defenseman. He's not going to win the Norris because he's going to be the most offensive defenseman out there. He's going to put up points. 60 assists last year, 6 goals. The numbers don't lie. And yes, I love the kid. Don't take this as me not loving what that kid brings to the table. Far from it, man. But don't tell me to put him out there against the best players in the world. It's not going to work out well for him. In the NHL, you don't always have the best players in the world on the ice. Teams are watered down, right? Because you can't always have the best player on your team. So some teams have those players, some teams don't. And in between, what do you have? You have guys that go out there and throw the body and, they muck it up. Guys like Tom Wilson, for example. You've got a guy who's got good mitts, or even better yet, let's talk about Team USA and the Kachuk brothers. Right? Both Matthew and Brady have the ability to put the puck in the net, have the ability to throw the body, get in front of the net, get their hands dirty. And you saw Brady drop the mitts off the face-off at the Four Nations face-off in Montreal, right? So you're going to tell me that those guys, one-on-one against a guy like Lane Hutson, will lose every time, or that Lane Hutson will not get punished along the boards? I don't see that. So if I'm Montreal Canadiens management, I'm breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. Okay? Forwards don't normally get as beaten up, for lack of a better term, as defensemen do. Right? Forwards can shy away from the boards. Forwards can insulate themselves, etc. Right? Especially when you're talking about a center like Nick Suzuki, who's proven not only that he's a little bit tougher than most people expected, but he's extremely elusive and he's skilled with the puck. So yeah, and there's no guarantees that Nick Suzuki's going to make the Olympic team, but he's been invited. Right? There's only a few players that have been named and officially to the roster, like Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon. That comes to be expected because those guys are veterans. They're expected to be there. They're among the best players in the NHL. And while I think Nick Suzuki is a top 10 forward, and I think Lane Hutson is a top 10 offensive defenseman, that doesn't mean his game is as well-rounded enough to be able to compete against guys of an international caliber. Right? You need to have an entourage of players that can play that physical style of game and not expect the puck to always be on your side of the ice and take a beating every time you do. So if I'm Montreal's management, I'm okay with this. Sure, I'll put my hand on the kid's shoulder and say, look, I'm sorry you're not making the Olympics this time around. But you know what? In 4 years from now, when he's got a little bit more time under his belt at the professional level, and he proves beyond just one season that he can not only be elusive, but he can take the punishment and still be effective, then 4 years from now, maybe the Olympic Committee turns around and says, you know what, guys, we need to take Lane Hutson. We need his offense, and he's good enough defensively to actually, go out there and take the punishment. But right now, nobody's sure. He only got popped maybe a couple of times last season. He's going to get popped more than that in just the first game against Team USA. Against Team Canada, I should say. So, take a step back. Don't call it a snub. Sure, he won Rookie of the Year, and that gives him a special type of status. And sure, they could have invited him, but then why have him go through the disappointment of not making the team if you just invite him for posterity? I wouldn't do it if I was USA Hockey. And the fact that he's not getting invited, let him focus on playing with his teammates on the Montreal Canadiens. Let him focus on being out there with his defensive partners, creating that chemistry, and getting the Canadiens back into the playoffs for a second straight season. That's what I want him to focus on. The Olympics aren't the most important thing, to me anyway. It's nice for the players because it's an awesome experience. But it's not the NHL. That's where I want the Canadiens to succeed. So let's back up a minute and just say to ourselves, it's a good thing that Lane Hutson didn't get named to the Olympic roster. That could change. They could turn around and say just before the Olympics, you know what, guys? Lane Hutson put up 55 points in 40 games. We wanted him on the Olympic team. But right now, I'm okay with him not going. And you should be too. Just my opinion. Put yours in the comments below. And one more thing, guys. While we're looking at Team Canada and Team USA, I want to talk a little bit about Sam Montembeault going to the Olympics, right? Now, he's going to be the third straight goaltender. Don't be surprised because both Jordan Binnington's going to be the starter after his performance at the Four Nations face-off. That is an absolute rigid 100% yes. And Adin Hill did a hell of a job as the goaltender of the Vegas Golden Knights. So for sure, he's going to be the backup. Will Monty dress for a game? They may very well do it just for posterity, but he won't get into one. But again, Jose Theodore, he was on the first World Cup of hockey team, never saw the ice. All right? So The guys just want to be there. And good on Sam Montembeault for being there. But I think there are a couple of other guys for Team Canada that should have gone ahead of him. Not because I think Montembeault's that bad, but because these guys were just that much better. And the guys I'm talking about are Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames and Logan Thompson of the Washington Capitals. We saw what Logan Thompson can do in goal. In the first round of the playoffs, other than game 3 when he got taken out of the game, and it was fantastic for the Washington Capitals, and he stoned Montreal at every turn. And he's one of the reasons why the Washington Capitals were as good as they were during the regular season. So why not give him the invite to go to Team Canada? And by the same token, the Calgary Flames are nowhere near as good as they are, if not for the goaltending of Dustin Wolf. Sure, he was a rookie. Sure, he surprised everybody, but numbers don't lie. And Wolf's numbers were really good. So just inviting 3 goalies, call it a little bit lazy on Team Canada's part, call that it not really being a priority to them, because at the end of the day, like I said, they expect Binnington and Aiden Hill to be their 1-2, Montembeault being the 3, so maybe that's the whole reasoning behind it. Who knows? But at the end of the day, there could have been better options. If it comes down to Monty being the 3rd stringer and playing internationally, we'll see how it goes. He's done well at the World Championships. That goes without saying. So yes, does it deserve to be there because of his history playing internationally? Absolutely. I will not argue that point because he's been good at the World Championships. But, like I said, there are other goalies that were better than him last year that should have gotten at least an invite. So that's it. Tell me what you think about Cole Caulfield, about Lane Hutson not being named to the list. Tell me what you think about the reasoning behind it. Again, there's going to be a lot of big forwards on Team Canada. The beating that the defensive players on Team USA are going to take at the Olympics, it's undeniably there. So ask yourself, is he better off not going? Or is he better off going? One more thing to keep in mind. He still hasn't signed his extension yet, right? So why would you take a chance on getting injured at the Olympics when you're still in contract negotiations in the NHL? Again, just food for thought. Tell me what you think. Bye for now.